Alright, hey all, Jay again from Bodywork with Jay, and I'm going to continue to show you how to open the pecs. So we did some myofascial release with the hands suction cupped into the chest. I was showing you that kind of directly under the collarbones and how that can help stretch into the collarbones. You can get as close to the collarbones as you want. You can also try all of that like lower down your chest and focused in around your sternum. It is great to release all of the pec attachments. So by that I mean the muscles attached to bones. So this large pec muscle comes over and attaches to this bone, the sternum, that runs, here down to here, and then attaches with your rib cage. So if it's great to work basically the edge of rib cage, edges of sternum, edges of collarbones to loosen up where muscles attached. So we can do that with our finger pads as well, as doing the stretching that I showed you before. So we can use probably these little edge pieces of our fingertips and finger pads, and we're going to sink into the fascia in a similar way that we sunk in with our palms into our chest. We can sink in with less pressure with our finger pads, and then we can do little circles. So we can do little circles like all along the collarbone, and see what it feels like to come from collarbone all the way out to shoulder. So you can even do some rolls with your finger pads into this part of the shoulder. This part of the shoulder gets, like this inside piece of the shoulder gets really tense, and it's important to loosen up this part, this like front part of the shoulder, especially because the pecs, like both pec minor, which is the little bandy one, that's smaller, but like kind of like almost into your armpit, like kind of on the side, this really like tight band, it runs into the arm. Pec major, like the larger muscle, also runs into the arm. So you have attachments in your arm, and so when we hunch, we're like almost crushing those like muscles and attachments. So all these arm attachments and like kind of armpit area gets really tight. So we can do circles into the shoulder. We can do it along the ridge of the shoulder, on the outside of the shoulder too. That can be another area that gets really tight. These are your delts or your deltoids. We can work little, fingertip, like paws almost, and little circles all along basically all the bones. So then I'm going to come down here, I'm going to like do these little circles all the way down my sternum. I'm loosening up all those attachments. I'm going to do that on each side. And I can also do this with a ball. I like a tennis ball. It isn't as intense as a lacrosse ball, but a lacrosse ball is also great. Honestly, any ball that you have. If you don't have a ball, like you can even make a ball out of some socks that you roll up, maybe put some rice in it, or just use the socks. Anything round that's going to give a little bit of resistance. And just rolling it around like with your palm or your fingertips, rolling that whole area of outside shoulder, top of shoulder, into the collarbones, into the sternum, into the rib cage. That can get pretty tender. Rolling it up into the armpit. I'm going to show you some ways to leverage your arm here. So you can do this with your hand pressed into your pec minor, or you can do this with a ball pressed into your pec minor. Getting pec minor by coming into your armpit and then pushing can be helpful to get it unstuck. So you can do that on the same side here, or you can reach across with your opposite hand, grab pec minor like that, and then you can use your arm to really open things up. I'm feeling a really intense stretch both on my side body and into this front of this shoulder here. So I've grabbed pec minor. I'm doing a gentle arm circle. Again, folks who are hypermobile, folks who've had rotator cuff issues, do not go too far. Keep it low. You can still get some effects. And this is going to be for folks who are pre-top surgery. This is great. All the stuff that I'm showing you is great. Post-top surgery, we will work up to this as you are able to lift your arms more. So I'm just doing some shoulder rotations. I can do my circles. I can do just kind of back and forth. But I'm gonna feel more of that pec loosen and engage with grabbing it and adding the movement of the arm. So do that on both sides. You can also just kind of make fists and push them into pec minor like this and just hang out here. This is also stretching my wrist. I have some wrist issues, so this also feels great on them. And you can also just kind of do some like shoulder rolls, which also is like rolling your pecs here. All right, so I've loosened all of this. I can also get into my rib cage. We often don't think about our rib cages very much, but if we are folks who wear binders or just have issues breathing or have anxiety, have depression, hold a lot of things in our bodies, there are so many reasons why this area can be a challenging space sometimes for folks. So if we can create more spaciousness, sometimes that allows for more breath, that allows for more movement. So I often like to address my rib cage, like my side body and into my rib cage, up into my sternum slowly. I'm going to do like broad myofascial release, so I'm going to stick my palms into my side body and maybe do some like broad circles, doing kind of like little pushes back and forth, basically just moving the fascia in all different directions. After I do that broad for a while, if you have some spots that are pretty intense, like in between your ribs, like a lot of times, like we get really kind of chewing gum feeling spots in between our ribs because they're so like bound up, like the muscles in between the ribs are so bound up, the fascia's so bound up. So we can take our fingertips and just, take your time, breathe, see if you can distinguish two separate ribs, and then just see if you can find some space in between those ribs. It might feel like some gumbled up chewing gum. And we're just going to hang out there and do some circles. And we can also move up and down. We can move side to side. And we can do that all along this rib cage. Another great thing to bring some rib cage awareness, increase your capacity for breath, is doing some rib cage lifts so the rib cage houses your diaphragm. So imagine your diaphragm is this huge muscle that is inside your rib cage, and when you breathe, the diaphragm is expanding And the rib cage, that's why you feel like your rib cage lift. So to increase that capacity, we can really distinguish where our rib cage ends, and if we have some restrictions along the edge of the rib cage. So I'm going to find the edge of my rib cage, I'm just going to sink in with my fingertips and breathe. And then as I breathe in, I'm going to be able to almost do a curl, like tuck motion into my rib cage. And when I exhale, instead of allowing that breath to push my fingers out, I'm going to stay there. So I'm going to breathe in. Now my fingertips are tucked underneath the edge of my rib cage, and I'm almost like lifting it. And I'm just going to stay there, and I'm going to keep breathing. And each time I can sink a little deeper. I can do that all the way down my full rib cage, from like here all the way out to here. You can do this laying down on the floor. I would actually recommend that, like laying on the floor, laying on a bed. It's easier to do that. I was just showing you in the chair for the sake of you being able to view me. That, and even bringing awareness to this part of your body. So if it feels too wild or too intense to really like do that tuck, just placing your hands along the edge of your rib cage and breathing intentionally, like all the way from middle out, is a great place to start if you're comfortable with that. All right, so some other things before we get too far away from the pec work. One other thing I wanted to show you with the ball, you can, if you put the ball into your pec minor and just hold it there, you can also do some arm movement by internally and externally rotating your arm. So by that I mean rotating your arm in its socket, keeping it down by your side, and I'm just pressing this ball into my pec when I'm doing that. And the kind of deeper you get into the pec, the more that you're going to feel this. Great. All right. We will pause there, and we'll do some more stretching when we return.